Howdy there, and welcome to the fastest skin cluster IO you will ever write, the art of compression. My name is Noah Schnapp, and I'm a rigging and character effects supervisor with over 12 years of experience in TV, film, animation, and games. And I'm happy to share what I've learned with you guys over the years in this tutorial series. So let's get started and take a look at the course overview. In Chapter 1, we're going to be taking a look at the different types of skin cluster IOs. Why do we need different IOs? What makes them faster, better, slower, larger in file size than all the other IOs? We're going to be looking at concepts such as why compression and custom deformer IOs are so important to a pipeline. And then we're also going to be taking a look at examples of different IOs. So we'll be looking at the native Maya interface, which is exporting based on UV images. And then we'll also be looking at the typical mainstream production use, which is a JSON file format, which means it's human readable. And then we're going to be integrating our binary compression algorithm, which is really going to leave both of these previous examples in the dust. It is absurd how much faster the compression algorithm is compared to the other methods of IOing skin cluster data, as well as any other deformer data. Chapter 2, we're going to talk about some core concepts that should be included in any deformer IO that you write either for your personal work or in a studio environment. We're going to be looking at a MVC software design pattern, which is basically model view controller. We're going to be looking at the format that is suggested for a typical IO class, separating our functions into clean sections and really allow us to easily swap out different areas when the time comes over the the years in production when we want to switch out little micro functions instead of just swapping out the whole thing. Lastly, in Chapter 2, we're going to be installing NumPy into Maya. This is going to be something that will rapidly speed up the writing and reading of disks or of files to disk. This will also really speed up filling arrays with numbers as well as doing operations on large data sets in arrays. Chapter 3, we're going to go ahead and write the JSON skin cluster IO. This is, again, the standard method for production deformer IOs around, at least at most of the studios I've been to. And, the argument is to use JSON because it's human readable. You can open up the file whenever you want and edit the file, fix something. But let's be honest, how often do you want to actually open up a file and a text file? Why not just resave the data if it's very quick and easy to do? So we're going to examine using efficient strategies for easy code development. So a way to create a simple test environment and reproduce it, and also have development functions for saving and loading the data so we can compare speed results and file size results. Then we're going to take a look at writing the save function, and then finally the load function. Moving on to Chapter 4, we're going to be diving into our compression algorithm skin cluster IO, and we're going to be dividing it into 4 different parts. Getting the data, saving the data, those two correlate together, and then loading the data and setting the data. The benefit of separating out these functions is that we'll be able to change the way we save and load independently of the way that we get and set data. So, again, if any of our code or infrastructure changes over, the next couple of years, we will very easily be able to swap out these core components without affecting the rest. Chapter 5 is something that I encourage you guys to apply to any data IO classes that you guys write. We're going to be looking at ways that we can standardize and future-proof any data set, regardless of whether the quantity or the order of the data changes in that data set. So, for example, if we have an IO that exports like 5 elements, today, but then in the future we decide we want to export 10, but in a different order, this type of data set will be incredibly fast, but also allow for that forwards compatibility and backwards compatibility. Chapter 6 will be discussing the algorithm. This is really where we'll understand how Maya saves skin weights and basically any other Deformer IO, how it populates it on the mesh, and how it reads it and then writes it into files on disk. And we'll be looking at how we can make this more efficient. What type of strategies can we do to maintain a lossless workflow, but reduce the time and reduce the file size that is just present in the typical IOs that export the raw data. Lastly, in Chapter 7, we'll be finishing up our compression skin cluster IO, where we'll be integrating the algorithm that we spoke about in the last chapter. Then we'll be performing speed test between the JSON skin cluster IO and our compression skin cluster IO. And then lastly, we'll just go over some final thoughts in ways that we can apply not only this skin cluster IO to our work, but how we can apply the concepts, methods, workflows, and tools that we've learned in this series to the rest of our work in the studio or in our personal projects. So with that said, let's dive into the series.